Hi, my name is Mia. Welcome to Scrubs and Savings. I'm a 22-year-old new grad nurse documenting how I'm living intentionally, spending joyfully, and giving generously. And today is payday, so we're going to break out my paycheck, budget it out, check in on my most recent spending, and have a little money chat. So during this pay period, I worked a total of 72 hours. So at my base rate, I earned $2,732.40. All of those hours were eligible for shift differential, so that was an extra $273.24. Then I worked 48 hours on the weekend, and that was an extra $96. I also get benefit credits for enrolling in long-term disability, which is $14.32, and accident and dismemberment, which is 66 cents. So my total gross pay during this pay period was $3,116.62. Then for my pre-tax deductions, that includes my benefits as well as my 403(b) contribution. So my benefits include long-term disability, which is $14.32, term life insurance, which is 73 cents, and accident and dismemberment, which is 46 cents. I currently live with my parents, and I'm really taking advantage of this high income, low expense time to contribute as much as I can to my retirement accounts. So during this time, I'm contributing 54% of my paychecks to my 403(b). So that was $1,674.89 during this pay period. So the total of my pre-tax deductions was $1,690.40. And then for my tax withholdings, that was $152.61 for federal income, $44.97 for Medicare, and $192.30 for Social Security and Disability, $60.64 for state income, and $17.12 for city income. So the total withheld for taxes was $467.64. So my net pay during this pay period was $958.58. And so for those of you that are new here, I use a budgeting software. You need a budget for all of my budgeting needs. I highly recommend it, and I do have a referral link down below where if you sign up for the subscription using my link, you get a month of YNAB for free, and I'd also get a month of YNAB for free. So as you can see here, I have $1,082.24 ready to assign. Of course, that includes my normal paycheck, but I also received an AdSense paycheck from YouTube that was $123.66. I am 1 month ahead on my expenses, so all of my November income is funding my December budget. And so far for my December budget, I have my monthly bills funded, my non-monthly bills and expected expenses funded, as well as my fund money. So we are just going to use this money to fund my savings goals. Normally, I set aside the first little bit to my income replacement / emergency fund. However, I should be able to reach my target of $12,000 using this paycheck. So instead, we're just going to fund my apartment fund with $451.50. Then my travel categories, which I put $250 total for. So that's $117.01 for my goal of having saved $1,000 for my trip to New Orleans. And to reach $250, that would be $250 minus $117.01, which is $132.99. So there's $250 saved for travel. And I'm going to zero the money that I had already set aside for my emergency fund for December and go back to my November budget. And as you can see, my target for this category was to have a balance of $12,000 by April of next year. And so I only need $412.50 to reach that target. And I have $461.11 ready to assign. So I'm just going to go ahead and reach that $12,000 target. And that $12,000 target is based on having 6 months worth of bare bones expenses. So now I have $48.61 ready to assign, and now I think with my extra money for the rest of the year, I'm going to set it aside to my brokerage account. So we're going to unhide it and set aside $45 to invest. And with this $361, I'm going to add it to my entertainment fund because I'm wicked for good on Sunday. And of course, I would like enough money to get a couple of large popcorns for my mom and Nick and I. Then as for my most recent spending, a lot of spending has been done in the past couple of weeks because I didn't check in on my spending last week. So let's go over everything that I have spent money on. So my normal giving came out, as well as that Christmas present during my last payday routine. So the new $17.68 that I spent on treating people with kindness is for the Wicked ticket for my mom. Then as for my travel category, I spent $248.96 last night because I've been tracking the prices on our flights to New Orleans multiple times a week for the past few months. And yesterday I just happened to check and I saw that our flight prices were less than $100 than they have been. And I texted Nick and I was like, are you comfortable purchasing these tickets? And he checked his travel category because he also uses Wine app, and he said, let's go for it. And that was $248.96, which I'm very happy with. I wasn't even hopeful that we would get it under $300. So this just means I have more money to spend while we are there, which I'm just so excited for. The music, the food, the environment, the warm weather. Oh, I'm sure it's going to be great. Then for my joyful life category, of course, I've been having some fun. So for my live events, I had already spent the $41.65 on a basketball game, but Nick and I also went to the other side of the state to watch the Book of Mormon musical, which I rated 5 out of 5. It was so funny and fun, and now I won't shut up with the hello song. That's kind of the vocal stimulation for the month. But Nick was kind enough to drive us there and back. So I paid for our dinner, which was $30 even, and our parking, which was $12. Then for my hobbies category, I spent $62 on a planner for next year. Now, I'm not really a planner type of gal. I've always been a digital planner. However, I just want to try something new for the new year. And for those of you that have been watching the channel for a while now, you know that I was doing monthly resets every single month up until July. And, life got busy. I was working full time. Now I'm on a really weird night schedule, so I can't film as much as I would like to, nor do I have, to be honest, the motivation to film all the time. So I think this is going to be a fun way to get myself back into planning and being more intentional with my time. I did do a monthly reset for November, but I just didn't film it because I was like, I kind of want to end this year on a very intentional, reflective note before the new year starts, because I know that it's going to be a huge year for me like this year was. And I'll definitely talk about that because I'm hoping to do a December reset because I have an extra day off during the first week of December, and I just kind of want to reflect on how the year went and just have a little chatty reset because there's a lot of things that I'm so excited for in the new year. Then for beauty, I spent $60 on a haircut. For entertainment, I spent $17.68 on my ticket for Wicked. Then I added a new budget category specifically for treating myself to stuff at work. I had that coffee on daylight savings time, which was totally worth it, like I said in my last payday routine. But a couple days ago, I also got some Jimmy John's. My coworker was ordering some, and I was like, you know what? I want it. So I spent $8.48 on an Italian sub, and it was totally, well, I don't know if it was totally worth the money, but I was glad that I got it. It was just so yummy, to be honest. It kind of really hit the spot. And when I woke up that morning, I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait for that sandwich. I probably ate it too fast and I had a coma, like a food coma after I ate it. I was still able to do my job, but was I like the most perky that night? No. And lastly, I spent $7.30 on getting coffee with a friend. Then I had already spent $157.83 on my car insurance. Then for my non-monthlies, I had already spent $95 on my Chase Sapphire Preferred. And then before I could purchase the annual YouTube Premium subscription, the monthly one came out, and that was $13.99. So in December, I swear I'm just going to get the annual subscription so that they don't charge me the monthly amount again. And lastly, for my little content creation category, I spent $15 on Canva, and I accidentally spent $17.99 on Epidemic Sound. So don't be surprised if there was already ad-free music on this video. I'm very content with my spending for November so far, but we all know Black Friday is coming up, and I'm getting mentally prepared for all of the spending that I'm about to do. Today's Friday, and I'm working tomorrow, but then I have a 4-day stretch off before I'm at work on Thanksgiving. So I think I'm going to do some preemptive window shopping for some of the things that I want to purchase, because it's not only my Christmas gifts and not really stuff for myself, but stuff for my apartment, like little things like towels and bedding and a few things that won't be too bulky and that I don't have to think about how big the apartment's gonna be. But of course, I want to look at things in person to see if I think it'll be worth the money. However, I can always just return it if I don't like it. So we'll see about my Black Friday spending, because some spending will definitely be done. Now, I normally end the budget videos here. However, I have been preemptively planning for my 2026 budget, and as most of you know, I'm planning on moving out in April, and I'm trying to figure out how I want to best prepare for those moving out expenses. Not like furniture or first month's rent. I'm already saving for that in my apartment fund, but more like having enough money for groceries for the first month. So I had a few ideas on how I wanted to do that. So the first one is adding a new budget category group and adding all of the line items that I'm definitely going to need on that first month, like a huge grocery haul, like $600 for groceries, $100 for household goods, and seeing how much money I need to set extra aside for those specific expenses to have them ready to go once that move out day comes. The second idea I had is just to start having a month ahead category group where I just set aside enough money to have, what am I expecting? about $2,700 for that first month of expenses aside from rent. Or instead of having to build that much cash up, there's two things to keep in mind. January is a 3-paycheck month, so I could just use that quote unquote extra paycheck to get a little more than a month ahead to have that cash buffer instead of setting aside extra money every month. And the second thing that I have to keep in mind is the fact that I'm getting my bonus in April. It's not going to be a separate paycheck from my normal paycheck. It's just going to be part of my first paycheck of April. So in order to set aside those specific cash buffers, I think I would have to decrease my 403b contributions to make sure that I have that much money to set aside each month before I move out. However, since I'm going to get that big paycheck that's a part of my contract, I don't want to decrease my contributions that much before then to use it as a tax shelter for my bonus. But I also want to keep front loading my 403b in the first quarter so that I can have more freed up cash flow for the rest of the year, which is important for me, not just to be able to have extra money to save in my brokerage account or for a future wedding, but also because I know that there's going to be about a 3 to 4 month period where I'd be making 10% less than I'm currently making. So for those of you that don't know, I work in a birthing center and I'm currently trained in high risk antepartum and postpartum. And sometime next year, I'm going to be training in labor and delivery. And that is a 12 to 16 week orientation. And I most likely won't be working on nights during that time. So I won't get really any shift differential because I probably wouldn't be working weekends. So I know that I make a great amount of money and I'm in a very privileged position, but a 10% decrease in income for a few months of the year is pretty significant. And I want to keep that in mind while I'm planning for my finances. I know that I could just decrease my discretionary expenses during that time, but honestly, I don't think I really want to. And that comes at a cost for my savings and investment rate. But also at the same time, I'll be just fine if I contribute a few $100s less than I currently am. I don't know. I'm so aware of the privileged financial position that I'm in, and I don't want to sound ungrateful for or like out of touch for thinking about that reduction of income, but it's still significant enough where I have to keep that in mind while I'm planning financially, because I know that's not going to be in the first 4 months of the year. It's going to be once I moved out. And of course, that also affects the income difference between Nick and I. He makes, with my current shift differential, we make about the same amount of money. However, with that 10% decrease, there will be more of an income discrepancy, but I don't know if I'd want to ask to split proportionally on income just for a little bit, because of course he has his own financial goals that I don't want him to have to reduce just because my income's going to be reduced for that little bit of time. So I'm not sure exactly what I want to do, but I would like to have that figured out before I do my 2026 budget reset and make new targets for everything, because that affects how much money I need to set aside for each paycheck for my savings and expenses, but it also affects my 403b contribution. And like I said before, I would like to keep that as high as possible before I get my bonus. Anyways, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on what I should do to prepare for those living expenses once I move out? Should I make sure that I set aside money every month to have that cash buffer? Should I keep my 403b contributions high and just rely on that quote unquote extra paycheck that I'm getting in January to have that cash buffer? Would you just not worry about it and kind of go with the flow? I don't know if I'm that third type of person, but I simply would just love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.